They never came back. In 1989 through 1991, I was working as an Army inspector at the Riverbank Army Ammunition Plant in Riverbank, California. I cannot tell you how much garbage we were manufacturing at that plant. I mean, the stuff coming down the line was nothing more than junk. Some of the shells had actually been stamped inside out. That's how dangerous they were. Most of the workers, including the Army officials in charge, were not worried about the product, as it was known that the shells would most likely never be used. Besides, the millions upon millions of shells would be stored away, hidden somewhere in a secret bunker, and then one day thrown away as old ammunition. However, when the Gulf War was about to begin, I felt that we had best get our act together before some of this garbage was used by our own soldiers, and it killed them. After stopping the production line hundreds of times and finally pushing hundreds upon hundreds of grenades off the line and onto the floor to stop the line, I lost my well-paying job. As the tensions mounted and the war looked more and more likely, late one night I contacted Tom Brokaw in New York and went on television on a show called Expose, which I believe is now 2020, and exposed what was happening at the plant. The United States Senate and the Congress called for a full investigation. Even though I presented more than 20 people who gave sworn testimony, as well as several recorded telephone conversations with Army officials admitting that the ammunition was faulty, they would not believe a word that I or the others were saying. All that seemed to matter was, where is the ammunition? Show us the ammunition, which they knew was impossible. They had the ammunition and they had it hidden. The product was now well hidden, and it was their responsibility to locate these materials and find out the truth. Well, the shells were used and 22 of our soldiers died as a result. Most were the National Guard troops from the Hartford, Connecticut area. The exact same thing is happening in the investigation of the beatings, the deaths, and the rapes at the Florida School for Boys at Marianna. More than 125 men have now come forward to tell of the deaths, rapes, and murders of boys as young as 9. These statements seem to me mean absolutely nothing to the investigators. The state of Florida wants us to produce the bodies of the boys who were killed. Our job is to present the evidence, as we remember it as young boys, and it's their job to take those statements and the evidence and locate the bodies of the boys who were killed, as well as find out the truth. The evidence clearly shows that many boys disappeared and were never heard from again. Even many of their names have now disappeared from the record books, and even many of those record books have begun disappearing or cannot be found. The statement, they, the boys, ran off and I guess the snakes and gators got them, seems to hold much credibility with the Department of Law Enforcement and with the investigators. Many of these boys, now men and credible members of society who witness boys being killed, raped, or beaten, or simply disappearing, is not a figment of their imagination. When we saw a boy beaten to death or disappear in the middle of the night after being taken to the rape room of the White House, we had no idea what they did with the boy's body. These Florida officials just do not want to do their job. They only want this situation to go away and hope that the past will fade away and be completely forgotten. I can somewhat understand this type of thinking if those in power today had anything to do with the rapes, beatings, and murders, but that's not the case here. The Florida governor, Charlie Crist, must have been a boy himself at that time. So their sharp, non-responsive, vindictive attitudes makes it very difficult for me to understand why they want this matter to be shoved under the rug as if it were unimportant. This case is about much more than just money, politics, or stature. It's about righting a wrong and making sure that these types of atrocities never happen ever again. If we're going to condemn those in other countries for their atrocities, then we had best be willing to admit and correct our own. The term reform school means a school to reform boys, not a place for those in authority to beat, rape, and murder young children, especially in the United States of America.